It was a cold, rainy night on October 15th, 2019, when I received the call. My name is Ryan Miller, and I was working as a pizza delivery driver for Tony's Pizzeria, a small family-owned place in a quiet suburb just outside of Pittsburgh. It was around 10:45 p.m., and I was finishing my shift when the phone rang. "Hey Ryan, we got one last order for the night," said Tony, the owner. "It's a bit out of the way, but they're offering a nice tip. You up for it?" I glanced at the clock. I was tired and ready to call it a night, but the promise of a good tip was tempting. "Sure, Tony. Where's it going?" Tony handed me a slip of paper with the address. "It's on the edge of town, near the old Miller estate." The Miller estate was an abandoned mansion rumored to be haunted. Kids in town would dare each other to visit, but few ever did. It was the perfect setting for a horror story. I laughed it off and grabbed the pizza, a large pepperoni with extra cheese. "Be careful out there, Ryan," Tony said as I headed for the door. "That place gives me the creeps." I waved him off with a smile, but a shiver ran down my spine as I stepped out into the rain. The drive was uneventful at first, but as I got closer to the address, the roads became narrower and more overgrown. It was like entering another world, far from the well-lit streets of the town centre. By the time I reached the Miller estate, it was nearly 11:15 p.m. The house loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, its windows like empty eyes staring into the night. I parked my car and grabbed the pizza, feeling an inexplicable sense of dread. I approached the front door, noting the overgrown weeds and the general state of disrepair. The place looked like it hadn't been lived in for years. I rang the doorbell, but there was no answer. I knocked, the sound echoing eerily through the empty halls inside. "Hello? Pizza delivery," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a dimly lit hallway. A tall, thin man with gaunt features and hollow eyes stood there. He wore an old-fashioned suit that seemed out of place and time. "You must be Ryan," he said in a low, raspy voice. "Come in, please." I hesitated, every instinct telling me to turn around and leave, but my curiosity got the better of me. I stepped inside, the door closing behind me with a heavy thud. The interior was even more unsettling than the outside. Dust covered every surface, and cobwebs hung in the corners. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay. The man led me through the dark, narrow hallway into what appeared to be a dining room. A single candle flickered on the table, casting long shadows. "Please, set the pizza down here," the man said, motioning to the table. "My family will be joining us shortly." I placed the pizza on the table, glancing around nervously. "That'll be $19.50, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. The man reached into his pocket and handed me a $50 bill. "Keep the change," he said, his smile revealing yellowed teeth. "Thanks," I mumbled, eager to leave, but as I turned to go, I heard a noise coming from the hallway, a soft, shuffling sound. I froze, listening intently. "Is something wrong, Ryan?" the man asked, his eyes glinting in the candlelight. "No, I thought I heard something," I replied, trying to sound casual. "I should get going. Have a good night." "Wait," the man said, stepping closer. "You must meet the rest of the family. They've been waiting for you." A chill ran down my spine. I didn't want to be rude, but every fiber of my being was screaming at me to get out. "Maybe another time," I said, backing away. Before I could reach the door, a woman appeared in the hallway. She was dressed in a tattered, old-fashioned gown, her hair a tangled mess. Her eyes were wide and unblinking, staring straight at me. "He's here," she whispered, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. "He's finally here." I bolted for the door, but the man grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "You can't leave," he hissed. "We need you." Panic surged through me as I struggled to break free. "Let go of me," I shouted, yanking my arm away. I sprinted down the hallway, the shadows seeming to close in around me. I burst through the front door and into the rain, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't look back as I ran to my car, fumbling with the keys. I could hear footsteps behind me, getting closer. I managed to get the door open and jumped inside, slamming it shut. I locked the doors and started the engine, my hands shaking. As I sped away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The man and woman were standing on the porch, watching me with those hollow eyes. I drove straight to the police station, my mind racing. When I told them what had happened, they looked at me skeptically. "The Miller estate has been abandoned for years," one of the officers said. "No one lives there." "I'm telling you, I was just there," I insisted. "They're still there." A few officers agreed to check it out, and I went with them, hoping to prove I wasn't crazy. But when we arrived, the house was dark and silent. The door was locked, and there was no sign of the man or woman. The officers did a thorough search but found nothing. "Must have been your imagination," one of them said, patting me on the shoulder. But I knew what I had seen. I quit my job at the pizzeria the next day and moved to a different town, hoping to leave the nightmare behind. To this day, I can still see their eyes, watching me from the darkness. Every now and then, I wonder who they were and what they wanted. But one thing is certain, I'll never forget the night I made my last delivery to the Miller estate. A week later, I received a call from Tony. "Ryan, are you sure you're all right?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. "Yeah, Tony, I'm just trying to move on," I replied, my voice shaking slightly. "That place has always been strange," Tony said, sighing. "You did the right thing by leaving. We miss you here, but your safety comes first." "Thanks, Tony," I said, appreciating his understanding. "Take care of yourself, Ryan. And remember, some things are better left alone," he added before hanging up. Tony's words stuck with me. They were a reminder of how close I had come to something far more sinister than I could ever have imagined. It was a rainy night on December 3rd, 2020. My name is Jake Parker, and I worked as a pizza delivery driver for Bella's Pizza, a popular local pizzeria in our small town. The weather was miserable, with heavy rain and gusty winds making the night feel colder than usual. At exactly 10:12 p.m., just as I was about to wrap up for the evening, the phone rang. "Jake, we've got a delivery that just came in. It's heading to Langley Farm," Bella, the owner, said. Her voice crackled with concern, but she knew I needed the money. "Langley Farm?" I asked, my eyebrows raising. That place was known for its eerie reputation, especially on stormy nights like this. "Yeah, I know it's out there, but it's a good tip," Bella replied. "Can you handle it?" With a sigh, I agreed and grabbed the large pizza from the counter. I bundled up in my rain gear and headed out into the storm. The drive to Langley Farm was going to be treacherous, but it was part of the job. The rain was relentless, drumming against my windshield and making the road nearly invisible. The wipers struggled to keep up, and the wind made it difficult to see. As I navigated the winding road leading to the farm, the trees loomed like dark sentinels on either side, their branches swaying ominously. Just as I was nearing the farm, around 10:30 p.m., my car suddenly started to sputter and lose power. Before I could react, the engine died completely and I coasted to a halt on the side of the road. "Damn it," I muttered, pounding the steering wheel. I stepped out into the downpour, the rain soaking through my jacket within seconds. The only light came from my car's dim headlights, casting long, flickering shadows on the wet ground. I popped the hood and tried to peer inside, though I had little understanding of car engines. The engine was steaming and making odd noises. I fumbled with my phone, but of course there was no signal in this remote area. I was completely alone, except for the eerie sounds of the storm. As I tried to figure out the problem, I heard a noise behind me. A faint, squelching sound, like someone walking through the mud. raced as I turned around, squinting into the darkness. The rain made it hard to see, and the wind howled louder, almost as if it was trying to drown out other sounds. "Hello?" I called out, my voice swallowed by the storm. There was no response, but the sense of being watched grew stronger. I turned back to the car, trying to focus on the engine. The noise grew louder, and I could hear footsteps coming closer. I glanced over my shoulder and saw a figure emerging from the foggy darkness. The figure was a man, tall and thin, with a hood pulled low over his face. His clothes were drenched, and he moved with an unnerving calmness. "Can you help?" I shouted, trying to keep my voice steady. My car broke down. The man stopped a few feet away, his face hidden in the shadows. "I heard you," he said, his voice gravelly and disconcerting. "I can take a look." He stepped closer, and I moved aside, unsure of what to expect. The man began inspecting the engine with practiced ease, his movements precise but oddly deliberate. I stood in the rain, shivering and watching him work. After a few moments, he straightened up and looked at me. "It's not just the engine," he said, his eyes meeting mine. "There's something more." "What do you mean?" I asked, feeling a cold knot of fear in my stomach. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced around the dark, empty road and then back at me. "You shouldn't be out here alone, especially tonight." Before I could respond, I heard another sound, a rustling from the direction of the farm. The man's demeanor shifted and he looked over his shoulder, his expression darkening. "I think we should get out of here," he said quickly. "It's not safe." Just then, the headlights of a truck appeared down the road, and the man's eyes widened in fear. "No, not now," he muttered, more to himself than to me. Without warning, he bolted towards the truck, disappearing into the darkness. I was left standing there, drenched and confused. The truck passed by and continued down the road, leaving me alone again. I quickly decided to get back to my car, hoping the man had been right about the safety issue. As I approached my car, I noticed something disturbing. The pizza box had been tampered with. The top was slightly ajar, and the contents were askew. My stomach churned with unease. I tried starting the car again, but it was still dead. I had no choice but to wait for a tow truck, hoping someone would come by soon. As I sat in the car, shivering and staring out into the storm, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The rest of the night was a blur of fear and discomfort. Eventually, a tow truck arrived and took me and my car to a nearby garage. The mechanic found nothing wrong with the engine. It started up perfectly once he checked it. There was no sign of the man who had helped me, and he was nowhere to be found. I never did find out who that man was or what his intentions might have been. The incident left me shaken and uneasy. I often think about that night and wonder if the man was trying to protect me or if he had something darker in mind. To this day, the memory of that stormy night and the mysterious stranger lingers in my mind. Langley Farm remains a place of unsettling memories, a reminder of how close I came to a fate I can only imagine.